Right, greetings everybody, and welcome to another video accompanied by some of the best and finest music in video game history. That's right, I'm still rocking the N64 music because honestly, it's like grown up, it's like embedded in my brain, and it's fun to see that some people out there, it's also embedded in their brain where they're just like, oh, that song, I know that song from somewhere. God damn it, Umbra, what is that song? Anyway, while there are actually server problems on JP, let's recap the most recent live stream for JP. I'm going to be alluding to some stuff and keeping spoilers out of this because apparently there might have been something that somebody said that they really shouldn't have. So let's jump right on in and talk about basically the live stream was set up into 4 parts. First part looking over some current campaigns that are going in on JP, which was actually mostly like whatever. Like in general, it was just kind of a big pile of whatever. Like, hey, look here, it's one of the most mid-tier units to ever come out for the meta that she's coming out. That's a little unfair, but also kind of true. We joke because we. But then they also talked about what's going on with the 26 or whatever number of million downloads we're up to with this one, which I haven't talked about before, so let me talk about it really quickly now. This is one of the weirdest quests I've ever come across. Basically, it is a guild quest where you need to, for 3 days in a 10-day period, send gifts through the guild system, basically sending your guild mates like the guild coins kind of thing. It's something that's existed in the game for a long time, but I guess most people don't do anymore because otherwise why have this campaign? And 100 people from 100 different guilds will be chosen out of a hat and given 2,000 Bizior. For everybody else in the same guild, they will get 1,000 Bizior. And to answer your question, no, 2 people from the same guild cannot win. So basically, even if you were sent 3 gifts in your guild and everybody else did, and some switching and whatnot, you can only one person can win the big prize, but then everybody else gets a nice little prize too. So here's the question: do you think JP has over 100 active guilds? Because that's my big question right now. I just want to know what the chances are of me winning, or more important, losing. However, this was announced that was completely new, which is a brand new thing starting in September called, and I'm going to say that this is essentially called Phantom Day. Because if you are logging in on specific days, the Phantom Days, which are held on the 0th day of every month, you can get rewards, super amazing rewards, up to and including great items such as a selectable UR summon ticket. Now, not really a ton of details on like all the hoops you might have to jump through, what exactly this consists of. We'll find out more in September, but it is quite interesting that they are really trying to get people to log in more for much better rewards. This could be just generally good. I expect there to be some probably less than ideal outcomes for some of this, like, oh, you can only use the UR select ticket for older units or something dumb like that, like older than the 4th year kind of thing. But who knows? With new units on the horizon, there's always the potential for more power creep, which means that maybe the other units just aren't going to be that good by the time 5th anniversary rolls. Who knows? But anyway, it is something new, it is something interesting, it is something noteworthy. Next up, you may not be familiar with this guy, but you will be now once I introduce him. So this is the lead scenario designer for Wotv. His name was on screen. Second there, I don't quite remember it, so I'm gonna feel really bad, but gotta make this video. He is responsible for Wotv's lead scenario, basically the main story. If you enjoy it, this is the guy to thank. And if you don't like the main story, well, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Just ignore it and get the Vizier. But he came on to the and just talked about the character relations, kind of teased a little bit about stuff that's going on in the story, and it was pretty cool. In terms of like scenarios for the live stream to put on, this is one of the more interesting ones, just because I mean, essentially, like, the story is one of the things that people actually have a bunch of goodwill for, and the goodwill here is pretty nice to see them giving a shout out to that. There was another reason that he was on stream, which we will about in a little bit. So yeah, that was essentially it. There might have been some really big story spoilers accidentally dropped by Hirano, but we're going to keep that out just for people who want to enjoy it later. So, without further ado, well, I guess the title screen probably has already given away the announcement of the collaboration.
なかった人多分帰ってきたと思うんですけれども、プレイした後でぜひアーカイブも残りますので、いろいろご確認いただければと思います。以上、開催中のキャンペーン情報&メインストーリー振り返りコーナーでございました。野口さんありがとうございました。ありがとうございました。
Oh, sorry. I'm a little. I guess I'm a little. All right. There we go. So, without further ado, the introduction of the new collaboration, which, as it turns out, was the obvious thing. Yes, say hello to the Series of Mana collaboration, specifically Trials of Mana, will be the next collaboration for JP as well as Global. And the characters that we are focusing on this time around are Duran, who is a Wind Elemental 100 cost character, and with an equipable weapon of Sword. Not Great Sword, it actually is just a sword. Our next character is Angela, who is a staff user. Believe she's in the same category as Scholar, for people curious about her. And she is a Dark Elemental Mage, who is 100 cost. And last but certainly not least, you can also see a story here. That's right, there is going to be a scenario involving the Mana characters and Wotv characters, which I am always for. This is great. I love seeing. But our third and final character for this collaboration will be simply titled the Flame Sorcerer, who is the ice element, of course. I mean, it's a fire-based character. He's called the Flame Sorcerer. Of course, he's he's fire element, actually. So yes, this will be our third and final character, a fire elemental character who uses glove-based weapons. And we'll talk about more about that in a second. But as you also saw, there will be 3 Holo Vision cards for this collaboration. At the time of recording, I am not privy to any information that any of these Vision cards are free. 2 Vision cards come on August the 22nd, which is when the collaboration starts, and 1 comes on September 1st, when the Flame Sorcerer will go up. What this basically tells me is that none of these are free, because otherwise it would be essentially announced. So, and the final thing, in case I didn't mention it already, Duran will be the free character for everybody who plays Wotv during this collaboration event. Alright, so with that being said, they talked about the Mana series a bunch. We're going to skip that just because, and start getting into our characters, starting off with Duran, who is a very physical-based tank with some great survivability and high durability. Starting off talking about his actual kit, his main job is called Paladin of the Mana 3 variety. His sub-jobs will include Knight and Knight Blade. So an interesting combination there. Not particularly the newest jobs, but maybe good support for his overall. And, his main job might end up just generally strong. Just because a character is free does not mean that they are not good in some cases. I would kind of expect this character to be generally good. Either way, he is a new wind elemental tank and could be one of the more higher durability physical tanks in the entire game. Talking about his limit burst, extra large damage to a diamond-shaped area around himself, increases own attack before it happens, and inflicts stun for 1 turn, which in general doesn't feel like an incredibly amazing limit burst, but stun should never necessarily be completely underestimated. It can be a little bit of a tide turner. Either way, that is the first details for him. The next details to talk about are his abilities. So he is described as basically a front tacker who can generate HP through himself through different methods, as well as generating hate. So he is actually a tank for all intents and purposes at this time. Starting with his spinning slash EX, a single target attack selecting up to 2 targets removes guts and releases a certain percentage of single target resistance and absorbs the damage dealt to heal himself, gives a fixed amount HP barrier to self that reduces damage taken the greater the area. Next ability, charge flash, single target attack with extra large power, increases own defense penetration rate before the attack, reduces type chain resistance before an attack, and increases elemental chain resistance to self after damage. And there was one other ability that I think I mixed in there just because of the way it's formatted on my notes. So give me 1 second here. Double check that. I think I can accidentally conjoin 2 abilities there. So the bottom left one, really quick, let's just go over that one more time to make sure. Bottom left ability removes guts effect from 2 targets, reduces a percentage of single target attack for 3 turns, deals large damage, and absorbs part of the damage dealt. The top right ability is the one that creates a barrier that prevents a certain amount of physical damage to the user, reduces damage taken for 4 turns when the distance is 3 or more. So basically like Squall's honeycomb ability, drawing enemies in towards him as a tank to do more damage. Recovers a certain percentage of HP medium and AP 2 times. So this is one of the key distinct factors about Duran that I think is quite interesting, is that he actually has not only HP restore on his attacks, which basically at this point I'm not getting too excited because it depends whether or not he can actually deal enough damage for them to be worthwhile. But the top right ability actually having a conditional HP restore when his HP drops below 40%, it heals. The way I read this is that it restores HP and AP 2 times, which is a little bit of a power creep compared to some older units which only activate that effect once, even if they have abilities that can recast that ability. Just it effectively doing it twice on a high HP unit might be generally good, and if he has any extra healing power up, well, that's going to be gravy. All right, moving on, talking about Angela, who is a dark elemental mage. Magnus is her primary job. Grimoire Master and Rune Knight are her subs. Starting with her limit burst, I've already said, but I'll say it one more time before we talk about the limit burst. Staff of the Scholar variety. Limit burst, single target attack with 3 consecutive hits that can reach up to 5 squares away. Destroys magical barriers before attacking and greatly reduces AP and applies slow after the effect, which is quite a powerful limit burst. It's single target, so it does have synergy with other strong characters already that can remove single target resistance. But then you also add into the fact that it is a magic barrier removal. It has really high range on it, and it will also greatly reduce AP. Is pretty interesting. Either way, this is considered to be a rear magic guard attacker and one that is quite an interesting effect. For as Angela is a rear magic attacker, she has a special ability that no other character has had, that as more allies die, actually becomes stronger. So, a job with wide AoE attacks while increasing the resistance penetration rate for her own AoE attacks, support abilities that can strengthen herself when an ally is incapacitated, further increasing the power of her attack. Now, what you'll note in the top right is a support skill is actually highlighted. So, increases speed, which is a great thing, increases damage, taking the wider the attack range when an ally other than her is incapacitated, recover certain percentage of her HP and increase damage dealt while reducing damage taken. It's quite an interesting ability. I mean, first of all, there's just a lot of things that support skill is doing that you can't get rid of. But it's a pretty interesting idea of her recovering HP and potentially keeping her from an ability that doesn't need to be activated. But then you also get damage down and her damage up, which seems just incredibly powerful. Either way, Angela seems quite interesting as this ability, by the sounds of it, has an interesting interaction with re-raise as well, where if a character dies and then is re-raised and then dies again, it might count as more activation. Since the character is not fully out yet and we don't have the Wotv calc data, please put a very, very, very cautionary pin before getting too terribly excited about this. But it does seem like it'll be interesting to see how it's actually coded and the number of activations. Either way, Angela is looking promising, quite possibly one of the strongest characters out of this collaboration. Now, talking about her other abilities, Dark Force on the bottom right is an ability that has a single target attack that removes shell, haste, and magic damage reduction. But it gets even better because it also applies poison to the target too, which is a status effect that isn't super focused on right now and is generally pretty nasty to deal with and can deal a good amount of HP. So, yes, I do think that this is quite an interesting ability for her. As for her last ability in the bottom left, it is a large AoE. It is no element on this diamond-shaped attack, and it removes wide area damage reduction before attacking. So it is generally just pretty strong. Either way, I think that Angela is probably the one that I am the most interested at the moment, since her kit seems very, very unique and interesting. And yeah, she's the one that I'm kind of the most personally interested, at least right now, in getting. And whether or not she will put up a strong fight in the meta, well, who knows? But I'm willing to kind of keep a close eye on them. Now, our last character is literally just called the Crimson Mage. So, or Fire Sorcerer, maybe in English when he's translated. Don't know. But either way, this character is a 100 cost fire elemental character with a spy sub job of all things and a scholar sub. And his main job is just the mage. So his name is his job. He's doing what he's doing. Going back just for a second, pausing the video while we talk about this character a little bit more, he is considered to be a glove-based character. And Limit Burst, sure hit attack with a cross-shaped area that can reach up to 5 squares away, destroys magic barriers before attacking, and absorbs a part of the damage dealt. This is pretty promising because limit bursts are just really, really powerful and generally are a good source of damage and consistent damage most of the time, which means that his healing should be pretty on the level. But the fact that it also destroys magic barrier is exactly what we're looking for in an offensive character. The question is whether or not his AoE is that strong. All right, next slide. He is described like Angela as being a rear guard magic attacker who is meant to kind of bring up the rear and come in and deal a killing blow to enemies. Also, he is described as having a high amount of ability accuracy buffs as well. And this job can buff itself and allows for quick action after reviving re-raise, which does seem to be a great indication that he will have. Either way, his top right ability is a greatly reduced target's reaction rate, as well as inflicts continuous damage to opponents, which is an interesting way to phrase that. Whether or not it will be... Oh, nope, never mind. I read it correctly, although it does seem to have a formatting issue on one of my screens. I'm just going to ignore that and go with my other one. Continuous damage, depending on magic power, which is interesting on his fireball. His bottom right ability, Crush It. After destroying a barrier that reduces magic damage, it deals damage large to the targets within range, hits them with higher accuracy, and absorbs a portion of the damage dealt. So that second ability on his bottom right has high range on it and is another source of healing for him. And his bottom left ability, after lowering the target's spirit for 3 turns, deal 2 consecutive damages based on magic power large, hits the target with higher accuracy, recovers HP small if his HP is below 60%. Yes, below 60%. If his HP is above 60%, though, he greatly increases his magic power for turn, which is pretty interesting little trick as well for this character that other characters don't have. We see a lot of the time certain conditions, like if your HP is low, restore amounts of HP, but we don't see a double-sided effect like this, where a large AoE like this that's already dealing damage and doing a fair amount for you is also giving an interesting conditional clause of if your HP is below 60%, you get a heal for free, which seems to be a big part of his kit. But also, if you're already in the lead and above 60% HP, you're getting a massive power boost for a turn, which would just continue provided that you are generally pretty strong. Either way, looks like a powerful mage-based attacker with some really nasty attacks that deal a high amount of damage, but also keep him healthy and potentially really strong. So all 3 of these characters look pretty interesting to me, but so far for me personally, I have to say that I think Angela is probably the one that I'm the most interested in so far. So yeah, that essentially covers all of our characters. So let's just jump ahead, collaboration, and talk about a few other things. So there will of course be new weapons for all 3 of the characters. There are 3 new vision cards, which more than likely are 3 characters where, or 1 vision card for each of the characters. What's interesting to me is the artwork for the final VC on the September 1st, which is the Crimson Mage, but also sporting, is that a Veritas unit? Is that Thunder Veritas supporting them? Well, that might actually have to do with the fact that this collaboration is going to have a special scenario, story, if you will, written for it. So that's generally kind of great news for anybody who loves those kind of things like me. I've always advocated for more of this, so great news. There's the weapons, so for each of them that will come in due time with the characters. There's also going to be a special quest to get a stuffed cactus item for in-game. Unfortunately, it is not like Slime, where it is a character. It's actually an item this time around. But it's still pretty cute and it's fun, so it is fine as it is. And yes, I've already talked about the story, but one other thing, there will of course be a boss style event where we will be playing against the Flame Sorcerer, so probably water characters, and a different item will be available through that. So lots of things to do with the Children of or the Trials of Mana collaboration. There was also, of course, advertising for the new game, which is to be expected. And we even had a little, I want to highlight this because it's always generally fun to me. was this, which is a game where they essentially had to count the number of Sabatenders, but not Wotv Sabatenders or Final Fantasy Sabatenders, with this being the final challenge. Did you get it? All right, well, if you did, please type the answer to it in the comments below, but there you go. Continuing on, just to close out this video, there was the announcement of the updates, but nothing was too terribly interesting there. This, however, was interesting with the announcement that Light Veritas will be coming to the JP version in September. And we also have a dates for basically the planned rollout of everything, with Light Veritas starting in September and ending in December for her rollout of all of her content. As for how you will be getting Light Veritas, you will be getting her the same way as Flame Veritas. So now, if only one Veritas remains, how will we collect his shards? Who knows? Not me. Any penny. Alright, other than that, that is basically the live stream for JP, and as such, it was great seeing one of these come back. While they are long and bloated usually, they are pretty fun to have the community wrap up and or show up is the word I was looking for, and talk and chat and remember all the good times and not get excited and disappointed and all that good stuff. But either way, it was a good little live stream. Happy to see it come back. Still could be a little bit shorter, but no complaints. Anyway, that's all for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and of course, like, subscribe, send me all your parents' credit card numbers. Don't do that, I'll get in trouble. Take care, and see you later as we get more. It's only 3 days away before we'll start reviewing some of these characters. Later.